We got the Colts heading to Baltimore to face the Ravens in a wild card round matchup this Sunday. There are no shortage of storylines in this matchup. You've got middle linebacker and future Hall of Famer Ray Lewis announcing this week that he is likely to retire after Baltimore's postseason run. You've got Chuck Pagano, the former Ravens defensive coordinator, not only back with his club after fighting leukemia for the past 3 months, but now returning to Baltimore to face his former team. Oh yeah, you've got Jim Caldwell, the man calling the plays on an interim basis in Baltimore, who of course was the former Colts head coach. So we've got all kinds of familiarity to discuss here, and I've got our senior editor of Pro Football Weekly, Mike Wilkening, who covers the AFC North, to break it all down with me. Let's start with Ray Lewis and that Baltimore defense. Obviously, Lewis has not played in a few months. He was out with a triceps injury. How do you expect his return? Of course, he's their emotional leader. He means so much in the middle of that defense. How do you expect his return to the lineup to sort of work out for the rest of the unit?
Well, I tend to think he helps on numerous levels, Arthur. I think first and foremost, obviously the emotion is going to be the story here on Sunday. This, could very likely be his last home game if indeed he retires. And, you would tend to think that he's going to bring a certain emotional charge to that entire stadium and team. So certainly that, I think, is going to be key. Secondly, from just the idea of depth, that he's going to help them, this linebacking core that's had injury issues all year. Just having another healthy body, I think, is a good thing. And this is a defense that, first of all, got some rest in Week 17, was able to rest some starters in a game that they really didn't need against Cincinnati. And they used it as kind of a fourth preseason game of sorts. And I think that was very helpful for them. And secondly, when you look a little further in the numbers, this is a defense that's kind of picked it up these last couple weeks. And we know the skill and the resume of the guys on defense. They've been a little bit banged up the entire year. Lewis coming back, it just kind of signals to me that this is a defense that probably is rounding back into form. Now, if it's in its best form, we don't know. But I think it's a defense that's maybe ready to deliver its best effort here going forward.
You know what was interesting to me is where you said that the Ravens, obviously, in a mostly meaningless game, decided to rest a bunch of key starters, see if they could get them healthy. You had the opposite end of the spectrum and Pagano returning, and in a meaningless game for them, other than the chance to really stick it to the Texans. He played his starters well into the fourth quarter. They came away with a big win. I think it'll be interesting to see how those sort of scenarios play out in terms of momentum as this one gets going. But, you hit on that Ravens defense, getting some key starters back. They're obviously going to need all hands on deck to stop Andrew Luck and that Colts explosive offense. As many vertical passing plays as any in the NFL this season. They have been two different animals away from at Lucas Oil Stadium and then playing on the road, of course. And then this will be Andrew Luck's postseason debut, as well as so many of his young teammates. So it's going to be interesting to see how they handle the circumstances. We've seen them deal with adversity as well as any team in the NFL, of course, this season with everything Pagano has been going through. But I think it's, there's a little bit extra juice, not only with everything going on in terms of Pagano's return, Lewis's return to the field, but just playing postseason football. I think that's going to be fascinating, and also, of course, how Luck is able to handle the pressure behind an offensive line that hasn't exactly been good enough at times this season is going to be extremely interesting. For the Baltimore offense, what do you think is the key to this game? I know that Jim Caldwell, of course, is a little bit new to the play calling responsibilities. It would seem that getting Ray Rice involved would be a pretty good recipe for success. But what do you see happening there and how the Colts will be able to counter that?
Well, I think it's a matter of having balance on offense, I think, which will be key for the Baltimore Ravens. Certainly, you're going to want to get Ray Rice involved as much as you can. But I think, obviously, getting Joe Flacco involved and comfortable, and he's been better at home than on the road this season, Arthur. And I tend to think that he's probably ready to deliver a good performance here on Sunday. This is an offense that, again, on its best, is very, very good. And they're not unfamiliar to this stage. And I think that's the big difference between this Ravens offense and the Colts offense. Is we don't know what Andrew Luck is going to do on this stage, where we have a pretty reasonable expectation of what Joe Flacco is going to do. And we can say what we will about Joe Flacco in terms of, is he elite, is he not elite? Well, he's a guy, Arthur, that has 5 postseason wins. Pretty good. And he has shown, at least in the early rounds, that he can take care of business. So I tend to think it's probably a good opportunity for this Ravens offense to start the postseason on a good note. But again, when you look at the other side of things, this Colts defense, you've obviously got some pass rushers in Dwight Freeney and Robert Mathis, and there's a great, again, organizational familiarity with what the Baltimore Ravens do on offense.
Yeah, I think Chuck Pagano is absolutely going to know, what he is going against, what he needs to attack. And I think on top of the fact that Freeney and Mathis, are playing their best football at the right time, you hit on a little bit of experience. As young as they are on offense, they do have some guys who have, been in battle before, postseason battle, like Dwight Freeney and Robert Mathis, of course, Antoine Bethea, players like this. So they're going to need them to be at their best. Of course, getting pressure on Flacco is going to be paramount. On the back end of the Colts secondary, there's going to be some major, there's going to be some major concerns if they can't slow down Torrey Smith, Anquan Bolden and company. The good news is that those corners, Vontae Davis, Cassius Vaughn, Darius Butler, are all playing their best football of the season. So that's going to be crucial as well, but I think first and foremost, it starts with stopping Ray Rice. We did just see the Colts 2 weeks ago become the first team in NFL history to win despite allowing 350 rushing yards. Yes, that is actually what I meant to say. They still won, so there's a chance for Ray Rice to really go off in this game. Well, we've broken it down for you. Now it's time to make picks. I'm going to let Mike go first. How do you see this one unfolding, Mike? I
think this game sets up perfectly for the Baltimore Ravens. You know, set aside even the Ray Lewis sort of the prospect of this being his last game here. I just think it's a great matchup for Baltimore. I tend to think they've got edges on offense and on defense in this game. They're a better team at home. Their best game, I think, is too much for the Colts, and I think they're ready to deliver their best performance. I think the Ravens win this game, and I think they could potentially win this game comfortably.
I think the Colts season has defied logic at every turn thus far. Obviously, they have found ways to win a lot of games they've had no business being in. If the Colts can find a way to beat the Ravens this week, you know where they're heading in the next round, right? Their old friend Peyton Manning out in Denver. So it's just the storybook season continues. For that reason, I'm going to pick the Colts. I think it's going to be a close one. I don't have a lot of things to go off of with the Colts playing well on the road, but I just think, again, there's been no explanation thus far, and I think that continues. The Colts find a way to win, setting up an absolute dream matchup in the second round of the postseason. For all the latest news and analysis, be sure to check us out at ProFootballWeekly.com.